Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor Hodges.
Good afternoon. Tomorrow, the city's executive committee will take the first step in the process of confirming my nomination of Acting Chief Arradondo to serve as the city's next chief of police. I nominated Arradondo because I believe MPD needs clear direction and forward-thinking leadership right now. Minneapolis residents and officers alike deserve a strong, respected leader at MPD to establish trust, direction, and a common sense of purpose throughout the department. I have asked a lot of the department over the last few years, and the Minneapolis Police Department has delivered more progress toward a 21st century model of policing than any other city in the country. And going forward, my expectations remain high. I continue to expect MPD to work every day to reduce crime in Minneapolis, particularly violent crime and especially gun crime. One of the best ways we can do that is by building community trust. I expect the Minneapolis Police Department to continue the trend of keeping positive community engagement at the center of its work. I expect to see stronger relationships with all Minneapolis communities, from leadership down to neighborhood officers. I expect MPD to continue its thoughtful review of MPD policy regarding use of force, and to keep the sanctity of life at the heart of every police interaction. I expect body camera policy to be ingrained in the training and the work of every officer, because our tools are only as effective as we allow them to be. And I expect an MPD that works with the city, the mayor's office, and the community as partners in our public safety. I have enjoyed working with Rondo for years and have always admired his calm brand of leadership. We've all seen that, particularly over the past few weeks. He has been with the department for 28 years, and before that, he was a Minneapolis kid, Minneapolis neighborhoods, Minneapolis schools, and a career in the Minneapolis Police Department. He knows our great city well and believes in its potential to be more than great, as I do. He is a skilled communicator who is respected inside and outside the department. He's got a long track record of building lasting relationships in neighborhoods across the city and has earned the kind of trust that only comes from honest, genuine engagement with communities. In a time when trust, relationships, and communication are more important than ever, I can't imagine a better choice for MPD than Acting Chief Arradondo. Acting Chief Arradondo.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mayor, council members. Thank you for being here. It's actually fitting that we are here. I was born and raised not too far from here, attended high school. I won't tell you my GPA over at Minneapolis Roosevelt High School, but I did graduate, and my family certainly grew up here and was raised, like the mayor said, here as well. So I'm actually glad to be here, over here in South Minneapolis. I'm humbled and honored to have the opportunity to lead the Minneapolis Police Department. I'm a 28-year veteran of the Minneapolis Police Department, and I truly believe that the Minneapolis Police Department is one of the finest police departments in our nation. And it is because of the men and women who go out there every day and night to provide the best in public safety and public service is what makes this Minneapolis Police Department what it is today. And so I'm truly humbled and honored to have the opportunity to lead the Minneapolis Police Department. The Minneapolis Police Department is recognized nationally for our commitment and leading work in the areas of procedural justice, domestic violence response and investigation, strategic crime analysis, crisis intervention training, de-escalation, youth outreach, and collaborative partnerships with community stakeholders, to name just a few. And again, I'm proud to lead such hardworking and professional men and women for the Minneapolis Police Department. As I move forward, my vision will focus on three main areas: culture change, accountability, and outcomes. And I want to stress that with outcomes, it's not just in terms of what I as chief see as outcomes for the police department, but also, and just as important, how do communities measure and value outcomes from us? I will be diligent in communicating my expectations internally to the men and women of the MPD, both sworn and civilian, areas involving training, policy, procedures, and even areas of the Minneapolis Police Department budget that can be opportunities for us to increase both safety and trust with our communities. I want to examine that as well. In the coming days, I will be posting on our website a data dashboard that will highlight police contacts that we have been tracking for the past several months. The areas of this data demographics dashboard will focus on our police contacts involving suspicious person stops, suspicious vehicle stops, vehicle searches, consent searches, and even curfew and truancy. I will also continue to look at policies such as our use of force and our body-worn camera policies and others to evaluate whether they can be strengthened. As with our body-worn camera policies, it will continue to evolve, and I will continue to seek input and recommendations for those impacted stakeholders. As I mentioned before, I will shift in how we measure outcomes to include what are positive outcomes that the community sees as well. I also recognize community trauma, both historical and present day. I know our officers also experience trauma from day to day. I want to increase our department's officer wellness outreach and resources, and I'm currently working on making sure both our EIS, our health and wellness, performance management, trauma resiliency work all connect seamlessly. Lastly, I just want to say that the greatest currency of value that we have with our communities is trust. Each and every day, our officers must go out there and earn that trust, one contact at a time. As I tell our officers, never underestimate the power of a moment. We have opportunities out there to build that trust, whether it's taking a bended knee and looking at the young child who's on their way to school and giving them some encouraging advice, or helping with our seniors to cross a busy intersection. There are opportunities each and every day for us to build that trust, and I want to lead our department in doing so. In the past several years, the Minneapolis Police Department, as well as police departments all over the country, have certainly been scrutinized. There have certainly been areas of our communities where the trust has been shaken. I'm committed to making sure that when the history is written, we are on the right side of history. The Minneapolis Police Department, we will not recoil. We will not withdraw from our obligation to protect and serve. We will look at challenges as opportunities, and we will see that sometimes conflict and tension can be opportunities to help make us do a better job. And so that is the message, and that is certainly a part of the vision that I have moving forward. Thank you very much.
At this time, the mayor and the acting chief will take your questions.
Acting Chief Arradondo, we've heard your predecessor say a lot of the same things, a lot of the same goals. What can you do that's different than that?
Well, I think each individual, each leader, each chief kind of comes at this job and at this journey from a different lens. Chief Arradondo certainly had her own life experiences that helped shape her. I certainly bring mine. As I mentioned, not only have I been a part of the Minneapolis Police Department for the past 28 years, but I'm actually a product of this city. I've had the wonderful experiences of having both being mentored from community members and elders in this community, and still continue to listen to those voices that would even be more critical of the Minneapolis Police Department. I make it an obligation to continue to meet with those voices. At the end of the day, I want to work with folks who will bring solutions to us to be a better police department, and so I feel very confident in that part of my leadership.
Arradondo, if I could ask, you've been a part of the police department for a long time and climbed through the ranks. Is this a permanent position that you want? Are you actively seeking out to be named the police chief, not just acting? And then if so, what would be your priority as soon as you get in? What would you tackle first?
So yes, and absolutely. because truly it is an honor, and I've stayed with this department and have worked and have been honored to work in many different assignments because I enjoy the work that I do. First priority, I think, is once again, we have done a lot of great work in the area of procedural justice and building relationships, but I think more importantly than now, I need to make sure that as chief of this police department, we redouble those efforts. There are communities right now that, quite frankly, are questioning that trust. That can't be. So that work's got to be earned, and I probably haven't had an opportunity over the last 10 days to talk with many of you. It's because that the work doesn't stop. There's not a pause button that I can set. The work has to continue, and so building that trust and making sure also that our officers know that this is an opportunity for us once again to be on the right side of history, and I'm determined to make that happen.
A follow-up to that, what say you to critics who say you've been a part of this system so long that you might be part of the problem?
I would also say to those critics, if they look at my history, I've also tried to correct change within the Minneapolis Police Department, and I've never wavered from adversity. And so I'm here for the long haul, and I will continue to be here to do that.
Chief Arradondo, you mentioned, for example, the possibility of strengthening use of force policies. What are some ideas in ways that can be strengthened?
Well, I think, for one, I want to really look at in terms of our de-escalation. I also want to make sure that where there are opportunities, specifically also in our training, where there are opportunities we can enhance that, where we can also perhaps utilize the expertise of community members to help us in those areas. We want to do that. We've had the fortunate opportunity in past years to work closely with the Barbara Schneider Foundation, for example, who's led work nationally in the area of mental health and de-escalation and crisis intervention training. We want to continue to see that we can galvanize as much opportunity to educate our officers and continue that training in those areas.
Edgar, CCO Radio, Madera, just a question for you. What do you think is the biggest problem right now with Minneapolis police? Do you think they use excessive force and that needs to be corrected right away? What do you see as the biggest challenge or problem right now with Minneapolis police?
So I would say if there's an opportunity right now for us moving forward, it's the trust piece. I think that we have done a lot of things in the area of trust, and I think that we need to continue to do that. Minneapolis Police Department, like other police departments across the country, we are going to have incidents or challenges or turbulence, if you want to say that. That just has to make sure that I, as chief, that I galvanize our folks to make sure that we go out there and regain those pockets of distrust where they may occur. But that's certainly the focus for me right now.
Chief, you said you joined the department when there were very few black officers, and that was part of the reason that you signed on. Yes. How significant is it that the city is just a few votes away from having its first black chief?
I've never even looked at it that way. I'm very humbled for the opportunity. As you mentioned, when I was a kid growing up several blocks from here, I can remember some of the veteran African-American officers, the late Riley Gilchrist, the late Monty Manning, and these were officers that I looked up to and aspired to join the police department. What I can tell you is, Chief, so I'm very humbled. There have been many African-American leaders that have paved the way for myself and other African-American officers to be in the positions we are in today. But I also know that as Chief of the Minneapolis Police Department, I have 400,000 bosses. And those are the folks that make up, in terms of the residents here in this city. So I'm committed to them and obligated to them to ensure their safety. Some of those residents are African American, but some of them are Native American and Southeast Asian and East African, and so I'm just humbled by the opportunity for that to occur.
Are you anticipating a variation on what Chief Arradondo was doing? I'll put it this way: is this MPD 2.1, or is this MPD 3, or something much different from what was going on before?
It's only been 10 days, so but I will say that. With every change in leadership, Chief Arradondo was her own leader. I have to be my own leader, and I have to be who I am and how I've been the last 28 years on this police department. I have to bring my strengths to this. I have to also make sure that I'm surrounded by a very competent and capable command staff to help me in that area. As much so as naming something, I think it's important that first and foremost that I talked about the trust that we are certainly going to redouble our efforts on. But I also say that the men and women of this police department, first and foremost, have to agree with and believe the message, and then they also have to agree and believe the messenger.
Rondo, if I could ask, there have been calls for systemic, change at the police department. From the top down, is this a change in personnel, a change in policy? This is a police department that answers a lot of calls every year, you know, and it's not just about one incident that happened recently, but the past few years.
Yeah. So when we talk about reform, I think that we have to ask ourselves, what does reform truly mean? And I also think in terms of education, I've had conversations with community members recently. There's sometimes reform where people will take what the private sector model is reform and try to insert that to a public sector model. In the private sector model, a CEO can come in and they may be charged with changing an organization because they're having a loss of earnings. They have autonomous authority and power to make massive hirings, massive firings, create their budgets and what have you. That reform is very different from being a police chief. While I may be considered a CEO, I don't have the autonomy to create massive firings and hirings. There are elected officials I have to work with in partnership with. There's state law that I have to work with. There's also contractual laws that I have to work with. But probably more importantly than that, policy, someone could come into this wearing this uniform tomorrow, and they could change our policies, they could change our training, and they could change even try to look at our budget. But ultimately, it's people. I have to lead people. And it's the people who are going to make the changes that are necessary. And so I've had 28 years and been very blessed to work with some very talented and professional, hardworking people. I've also had to build currency with them of trust and respect. And so that is what I feel I have moving forward, and that is what I will focus on.
Chief, you mentioned culture change as part of your top 3 visions for the department. What do you mean by that?
So culture change doesn't occur overnight. And one of the things I have to be very intentional about and realistic is that the changes I wish to see now that will benefit not only the men and women of this department, but our communities moving forward, may not come to fruition while I'm still your chief. Matter of fact, major city chiefs, tenures roughly is about 3.5 years. But the work can't stop. I have to set in place and build upon successes that have occurred, but I also want to see better this police department in our communities, to know that long after I'm gone, that the Minneapolis Police Department was on the right side of history, and we are better to our communities because of that.
Chief, how does the culture have to change? How does the culture have to change?
Culture changes in a lot of ways, but I will say that probably one of the most dramatic ways it happens is when I talk about procedural justice, giving our communities voice, respect, being trustworthy and neutral. That also means within the department. I have to make sure that the men and women of this department see me also as being trustworthy, respectful, and because once again, they have to do the work. I will tell you where culture doesn't change. It doesn't change by just changing papers. There has to be a connection with the men and women who are doing the work, and they have to believe that the work is meaningful, and they have to know that significance between building those relationships with the communities, that we're all better because of that. So that's the first part of culture change.
Rondo, as far as, have you had any follow-up conversations with Bob Kroll from the union following the announcement of the body camera change from last week?
I will say that we meet as a team regularly. We have labor management meetings, and so the discussion of body cameras was certainly discussed then, and we'll continue to have conversations.
What was that conversation like?
It was a private conversation, so but we will continue to have those conversations.
Chief, just curious, what scares you about this job?
I don't know if so much anything scares me, but what I will tell you is that the work is ever evolving. Many years ago, chiefs could write up a 5-year business plan. I would venture to say that in today's day and age, you're probably safe doing a year's business plan. So when we talk about culture change, when we talk about policy changes, these things have to ever be evolving because our communities evolve. Our communities in our world are much more fast-paced today, and so I think that it's really making sure that I stay attuned to the needs and the wants of our communities as well as our department members. You know, we're hiring a millennial generation, which is very different from the generation that I came on. And so those are things that I have to look at as chief of police. You know, how do I best make sure that we're getting qualified candidates to work in a rapidly ever-changing way of doing being a peace officer.
One
Mayor
last
Hodges,
question.
if I could ask a question of Mayor Hodges. The announcement of an interim, now acting police chief, this could all change in just a matter of months with an election. It could stay the same, it could change. Why do this now if there's possible change in a couple of months?
Well, the first thing I will say is I have deep and complete confidence in Acting Chief Arradondo. And that, you know, the question comes up, well, should you do a search and should you wait? And there's a couple key reasons. First, when you have the caliber of talent and the caliber of vision and the caliber of experience in a leader in the police department who also has this history in Minneapolis in the community, who is as deeply respected inside the department and in the community as Mindaria Arradondo is, you want that person to be your chief. So I'll say that first. And second, you know, Acting Chief Arradondo mentioned this, I mentioned this. We have asked a lot of our department in the last few years. There has been a lot of change. You know, Acting Chief Arradondo has been here throughout that, certainly for the last 28 years, and making sure that folks know who the leader is moving forward in this department at this time is important for the community, but it's also important for the officers in the MPD.
Thanks, everyone.